Eminence, dear colleagues in the faculty, it's such a privilege to work with each one of you in the faculty. I've again experienced this the past year. It's a real great privilege, and I hope you students and graduates realize how privileged you have been to have such a faculty. So maybe we start with giving them a warm round of applause. Dear graduates, I have 3 messages for you today. Mission first, leadership, and courage. And first, I have something to personally give to each one of you. And then, when you have it in your hand, I will ask you to read it out loud together with me. Sorry. And I would like to ask one of the students maybe to later come and pick up, so everybody, when leaving this hall, will get a card like this. Maybe graduates, I ask you to briefly stand up so we can raise our voices, and let's read this together. Go into the whole world and proclaim the gospel to every creature. Please be seated. Go into the whole world and proclaim the gospel to every creature. Now, in the different gospels, there are different translations of what Jesus said here. But I specifically like this one of Mark, because it's so very specific. It's so very direct. There are no sort of conditions. No, he just says every creature, period. And dear graduates, if you leave the ITI without this as your calling, then we have failed in our mission. This is the mission Christ himself has given us. And so has our founder, Saint Pope John Paul II. That is why I had these cards printed for you. Please carry this card with you all the time. It's your membership card. But let me also give you a cautionary thought and pass on a suggestion which we were given recently during a wonderful homily in our parish church. The priest said that if we want to evangelize, we first and foremost must be a Christian ourselves. So what makes us a Christian? And he continued. He said, it doesn't make us a Christian that we have a theological degree. Sorry, guys. He also said, it doesn't make us a Christian that we are academically very successful with books and articles in theology or philosophy published and lectures given. This counts for us as academics. Then he said, it doesn't even make us a Christian that we are very pious. All these things are important, and especially the last one, piety. Going to Mass, praying, are very important, something we could not live without. But, as the priest said in his homily, that doesn't make us a Christian. What makes us a Christian, he said, is that our life is fully transformed by Christ through the gospel and through the sacraments that help us in this process of transformation. And I would like to quote here Pope Benedict XVI, who has this wonderful way always of bringing things to the point. He says, being Christian is not the result of an ethical choice or of a lofty idea, but the encounter with an event, a person, which gives life a new horizon and a decisive direction. Then, and only then, can mission be fruitful, when our being a Christian gives our life a new decisive direction, because the light of Christ shines through you. Your time at the ITI, and today we were happy to already hear some examples of that, should have transformed you. Not into a proud scholar who thinks knowing it all, but into a humble, yet shining disciple of Christ. Dear graduates, class of 2018, if you feel the ITI has not brought about this transformation in you, then come and speak to me afterwards, as we will then have to do our homework better. Let us move to my second point today. Leadership. You graduates are called to be leaders. Each one of you, without exception. Because at the ITI, we form leaders for church and society. And that is our task here as well. You have been chosen to be part of a new and emerging global Christian elite of leaders that need to bring change on all levels of society and through all professional and vocational callings. Our very confused and broken world is crying out for it. And again, I was so happy in the descriptions of the graduates to once again hear in the very different areas of professional and vocational life you will be entering, because it's exactly there in all these areas where your leadership is needed. Again, not a proud or arrogant leader, but a servant and loving leader. Recently, I had the wonderful opportunity to give leadership talks for business people and for politicians on different occasions. And most of what I told them also applies to you, privileged graduates of the ITI that you are. I would like to call it the 7 habits of a true leader. 1, the first habit. He or she respects and defends the dignity and life of every human being from conception onwards. 2, he or she serves the common good at all times and as a priority. 3, he or she leads by example and the willingness to sacrifice. 4, he or she loves, honors, and spends time with his or her family. Because if the family is not the basis of all you do, whether you are married or whether you're still with your parents or whether you live in another sort of community, that's where your first love and honor has to go, to be the right basis for your leadership. 5, he or she actively and passionately seeks the integral development of each person entrusted to him or her, again, in whatever field of activity you are engaged. 6, and this one I like a lot because very often people limit this to business, but it is not limited to that. The 6th habit of a true leader is that he or she is entrepreneurial. Everybody has to be entrepreneurial who is a leader, because it is an attitude of life that never simply accepts the status quo and always looks to improve, to invent, to see how this can be done better or differently. And the 7th habit, which is the most difficult one, especially for all those of us who are in academics, he or she learns to listen first. Oh, how difficult that is. I struggle with it daily. Now, you probably did not realize that when you signed up to study here at the ITI, that you signed up to take responsibility in the world. If you had not realized then, by today, by the end of this ceremony, you should have realized, because you are now called to go into the world and take responsibility. This is also the reason why we at the ITI are always so strict that we want our graduates to leave Trumau after they graduate, unless they have been admitted to a new program. We don't want you to stay here, not because we don't love you, not because we don't see your talents, but because you are called to go out in the world, to serve the church and to serve society, and to be leaders in church of society. Trumau can be very comfortable, so let today be for you a rallying call to go out, to go into the world, to lead, because the world needs your leadership today more than ever. And I come to the 3rd and final point: courage. Proclaiming the gospel and being a leader is not going to be an easy task. It is going to be very tough. Even more so because we live in a world where Christ and his church are rejected and increasingly persecuted simultaneously from 2 sides. We are dealing with radical secularism and with radical Islamism, both militant in style and with powerful political backing. Did you read what was the first reading today, should we have followed the normal ordinary time, which we didn't because it's a great feast today? But the first reading in the readings of ordinary time is very fitting for you graduates today in relation to what I just said. It's St. Paul to Timothy, where he says, "For the time will come when people will not tolerate sound doctrine, but following their own desires and insatiable curiosity will accumulate teachers and will stop listening to the truth and will be diverted to myths." Well, in fact, dear graduates, we are already fully in that time that St. Paul speaks of. And the myths he speaks about are now even becoming laws in our countries. Our Holy Father, Pope Francis, speaks and warns incessantly about the myths presented, for example, by the gender ideology movement, where the biological reality of man and woman is being denied under the guise of sexual education programs, both in different parts in all the countries that we represent here. God's plan with humanity through marriage, sexuality, and the family is being seriously undermined. But also, look, for example, to Ireland, once the Catholic bastion of the West. We recently saw scenes of jubilation when 2/3 of the voters decided that it is just fine to kill at will the most innocent of all human beings, the unborn. We are already living in the time of the dangerous myths that St. Paul is speaking about. And you, dear graduates, will need a lot of courage to be willing to see, I repeat, these dangerous myths for what they are, and present our world through whatever calling in life you have with a much better alternative, which is what the Church has offered us for 2,000 years. We don't only need good theologians, priests, and religious. I dare say we need even more good husbands and wives who are faithful, fathers and mothers who are faithful, grandparents who guide their children and grandchildren with their wisdom and their love. But also, we need teachers, doctors, lawyers, politicians, judges, journalists, we heard it today, psychologists, and the list goes on in all professional areas. We need them in all those areas that are transformed by Christ and radiate that. This, my dear graduates, is your calling. It is your calling to be a Christian elite of courageous leaders. And I add to that, take charge of the world. Don't hide from the world. That was not what Christ told us. Take charge of the world. Be leaders. That is what I would like to send you off with. And in concluding, I say, class of 2018, you have graduated. Throw up your hats.